Welcome to the Pretty Powerful Podcast, where powerful women are interviewed every week to share real inspiring stories and incredible insight to help women or anyone break the barriers, be a part of innovation, shatter the glass ceiling, and dominate to the top of their sport, industry, or life's mission. Join us as we celebrate exceptional women and step into our power. And now, here's your host, Angela Gennari.
Hello, and thank you for joining me for another episode of the Pretty Powerful Podcast. My name is Angela Gennari, and today I'm here with Carrie Colbert. Hi, Carrie.
Hi, Angela. It's so good to be with you today.
I am so excited to talk to you. So Carrie is doing something that I have always envisioned as like what I want my grown-up job to be after I decide what I really want to do. But she's doing something that I think is just absolutely amazing. So Carrie is the founding and general partner of Curate Capital, which she leads a venture capital firm committed to investing in women by women. Her firm takes a distinctive approach, focusing on supporting female entrepreneurs and investing in women-led businesses. So amen and hallelujah to that, because my goodness, I can tell you it's a struggle as a woman to find capital. And I love that you're out there paving the way and making a difference. So thank you for all you're doing.
Oh, thank you for that. It's a real privilege to get to work with so many wonderful women who are building great businesses.
Absolutely. So what made you want to get into the venture capital side?
Yeah, well, this is kind of a second act for me, professionally speaking. I had a whole different career for almost 20 years.
Wow.
And all of those early decisions were just very practical and pragmatic in nature. So I was the first in my family to go to college and, kind of grew up in less than ideal circumstances. And so I knew that the path forward, kind of in rising above those circumstances was education and then professional and financial success. So like I said, my early decisions were not necessarily based on passion, but more pragmatic and practical in nature. So I ended up studying engineering, specifically petroleum engineering, because I got a full ride scholarship at the University of Texas.
Okay.
And then so after graduating with that degree, not surprisingly, the best jobs were here in Houston in the oil and gas industry. And so I had a career in the energy industry for almost 20 years. And it was a great career. I got my MBA along the way and had the unique opportunity to work for a company that most people haven't heard of, but it's now, I believe, the largest privately held oil and gas company. It's called Hillcorp Energy. And it was founded by a guy named Jeff, who's a billionaire now, wasn't when I started there. But what I loved about working at that company was that he ran the company with such an entrepreneurial culture. So even though I wasn't necessarily passionate about the industry necessarily, I got to be part of such an incredible company and learn so many invaluable lessons about entrepreneurship from him. And so I was in that industry for almost 20 years, about a dozen at that company. And really part of that entrepreneurial culture was having equity or ownership in the company. Yeah. Everyone had some level of that. And then we were allowed to kind of reinvest some of our own cash into the business. And so it was really a unique setup that eventually gave me the financial flexibility to just kind of walk away and figure out what I wanted to do next.
That's amazing.
It was a rarity that someone would leave that company because it's a wonderful place to work. But I took that chance on myself. And so I left not knowing for sure what I was going to do, but I was determined that I wanted it to be entrepreneurial. I learned that I liked that, style of business and I wanted it to be that, but I wanted it to be something that was just more personal, something I was passionate about myself. And so the long story short is that I very much stumbled into investing as this second career via social media. In fact, I was on Instagram and the first week it launched. At the time I was still working my day job. But I was, single and had no kids and had a lot of disposable income. So I was doing a lot of fun things. I was traveling and going to fashion shows around the world. And I liked taking pretty pictures. And so back in the early days of Instagram, where you could take a pretty picture and post it, and there was no algorithm and there was no video, and it was fairly easy to grow a decent sized following in short order. That's when I excelled at Instagram. Now I can't keep up with it all. But I say that because I kind of accidentally became a small-time influencer, if you will. And that led into some brand partnerships. And as I would partner with brands, I would just very naively ask, like, hey, are you looking for any board members or investors or advisors? If so, I'd love to pitch in. I'd love to be a part of what you're building. And so over a period of 5+ years, I basically learned on my own dime, if you will. So I reinvested most of the money I had made, in my previous career into female-founded businesses. And in so doing, 3 really important things happened. One, I was having great fun, and I would not have used the word fun to describe my career before. It was great, but not fun. 2, I was seeing great results. So I was realizing that just, like you alluded to in the opening, these women-founded businesses are generally speaking underfunded, yet overperforming. And so I saw that there were great results happening just from a small infusion of both capital and then maybe some guidance, whether it be mentorship or advising or whatever. Like we could partner together and do better together. So I saw it working. But then number 3, and probably most importantly, is I saw there was just a great opportunity set, way more than I could personally handle. And so again, I once again kind of very naively took that next step, bet on myself and also other women, and said, let's start a venture capital fund. And so I was definitely an outsider to the industry, and did not know what I didn't know, but I knew I could figure it out, right? And so I knew I had what mattered most, and that's the deal flow. In our world, that just means that I had companies reaching out wanting funding. I had those relationships within the space where I knew that I had the opportunities to invest in, just really high quality businesses. I just needed to find a way to do more of it. And so it's been a steep learning curve. Certainly knew nothing about fundraising or how to really run a fund, but we've learned those things along the way. And so we launched our first fund, had the idea for Curate Capital in 2020, then the pandemic hit. So it was really 2021 when we launched in earnest. And I, again, knew nothing about fundraising. I totally did not think we were going to meet our goal of $10 million, but ultimately we closed at 15. So if you just look at the results, it looks like, oh, great. She was 50% over her target, but there was a lot of, sleepless nights in there and a lot of hard lessons learned. But what I'm actually more proud of is not the, just the result, but how we got there. And what I mean by that is we have over 80% of our investors are women, which is really unheard of in the venture capital world.
Yes.
So as cheesy as it sounds, we really are a case of women supporting women. I'm really honored to have so many successful business women who have invested their resources to, kind of fund the dreams and goals and visions of other women. So it's really cool.
That is amazing. Absolutely amazing. That is so cool because there's nothing more important to me than women supporting women. Excuse me as I cough. But I see that all the time where, women will kind of rah from the sidelines, but to put your dollar behind it's a whole nother level. I mean, because that's where we're missing it, right? Like we can get online and promote our friends' businesses, but are we really out there spending our money where it matters? And that's with other women-owned businesses.
That's exactly right, Angela. And so, it's a real privilege to have successful women entrust their resources to me. And then in turn, we entrust, our collective capital to women who we believe are building the products and services that they want and need for themselves, their families, their home, and beyond.
So let me ask you, when you started investing in women-owned businesses, is it because that's what you were interacting with on Instagram, or was it like a default, or were you intentional about, I want to only invest in women-owned businesses?
Well, it's a good question. It became intentional, but I would say again, I very naively kind of get myself into situations and then I learn as I go, right? And
love it.
Yeah, this, I think, and it's quite the dichotomy because I am an engineer and, numbers person by nature. And so I can certainly, like many others, get myself trapped in the pattern of overthinking things. But I think if I look back on my career path, the best moves I've made are those when I didn't overthink it, right? When I took that leap and just kind of bet on myself or believed in myself. And so I got to be careful I don't get in my own way sometimes. But yeah, so when it came to investing, I think you're right. I mean, I had never thought of it that way, but I think it just was kind of happenstance that the brands I was working with on the influencer side that resonated with me happened to be female founded. And so kind of carved out that niche in the world. But then as I looked at the data and the numbers, it's very compelling, Angela. So study after study shows that, well, women are underfunded. I mean,
Yes,
less
we
than
know.
2% of VC dollars in the US go to women. Great, we all know that. But something that people may not be as aware of is that there's multiple studies that keep putting out the same sort of result, that women are more capital efficient, meaning for every dollar of capital invested, they're generating more revenue. And in fact, there's one Boston Consulting Group study as an example that showed for every dollar invested, all female teams generate 78 cents of revenue, whereas all male teams generate 31 cents of revenue.
Wow.
So it wasn't even a close, contest there. And I do like, though, to say that, we are not exclusionary. This isn't some, agenda driven thing. I think it just makes good business sense to invest in women. Women, also, so not only are they underfunded, overperforming, but as we can all attest, in most households, women control most of the spending, right?
Absolutely.
I think the number that I see floated around is somewhere between 80 and 85% of household spending decisions are based or are driven by the women in the household. So if you think about that, we have a core belief that women are developing the solutions that they want for themselves and their families. So if those businesses are underfunded, yet delivering good results, and we've got good relationships, well, then it just makes good business sense to invest in women. And beyond that, of course, we think we're making a positive impact as well, but it also just makes sense from a dollars and cents standpoint.
100%. Yes. Could not agree more. Well, and I find that for women, when they start businesses, generally the businesses that they start are because they can go work for somebody, and that's usually the path of least resistance. When you start a business, it's challenging, as anyone who owns a business will tell you. It's not easy to start a business. It takes a lot of, women are generally a little bit more risk averse. But when they do start a business, it's because they are trying to solve a problem that they personally have. So whether that is, hey,
Absolutely.
I need a more efficient diaper bag. I need, a safer EV charging station. I need this. Like, there's a problem that they recognize that no one has solved for them, and they're out there to do it. And so when they're doing it, it's very mission driven. And I think that that's one of the things that is different with women and men. When we start businesses, men will do something because, like, hey, I'm going to start an engineering firm, and it's going to be just like every other engineering firm. But when a woman starts an engineering firm, there's going to be a different spin on it. Like I was telling you prior to the podcast, I own a security company. I don't have a security background, but I saw that there was a need to do things differently. And so I learned the industry and I started a security company. And it was probably one of the best things I ever did, because what we do is vastly different than how men run security companies. And so while, we are not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but at the same time, I do feel like what we are delivering is a better service with higher value to the patrons that come to events.
Angela, you're spot on. And I'd love to double click on that for just a minute, because I think, you framed it in a way that I don't usually frame it when I speak. But as you're speaking, I'm thinking about, the portfolio of companies we have, almost 20 companies that we've invested in, and they're all solving some personal pain point that they experienced or observed. And here's the thing, though, sometimes it may be a profound pain point. Sometimes it may be just a convenience or superficial pain point. For instance, we have one company that is called Dough. It's a better for you snack brand. And the founder, Sabina, started this in 2020 when during the pandemic, everyone was taking so many immunity supplements and vitamins and all that sort of stuff. And she thought, well, surely, they've taken bad stuff out of some snacks, right? We've taken out the allergens and that sort of thing. But what if we put good things into our snacks? And so she was like, I'm tired of taking a handful of, vitamins and supplements every day. And what if we put those good things into our foods? So, hey, great. I mean, that is a right on trend for, now we see that as a full on, industry trend, but she was early on in the pandemic thinking about that. So she creates yummy, good for you donuts and cookie doughs and things like that. So, a delicious solution, not necessarily the most profound problem in the world, but wonderful solution. On the other end of the spectrum, we have a company called Intuitap. And what she has developed is basically a stud finder for the spine to make getting epidurals easier. So she is solving a literal pain point for so many women. Yes. And what I love about that, even because it's a great example that these solutions don't have to be rocket science.
No.
Even though that's like something in the medical field, it's not even cutting edge technology. She just observed a pain point of women and looked for a solution. Whereas, if you look back historically, maybe most anesthesiologists have been male, and they, think they're doing a decent job just kind of feeling along your spine with their fingers. But she said, no. What if we brought in just a simple imaging device? It's not complicated. It's not cutting edge technology. It's also not expensive. And we've now gotten FDA approval for that. And so that'll be coming. Yeah, it's really fabulous. And so, we're honored to support Jessica and her team at Intuitap. And we have for, 3+ years now, and now we have FDA approval. And so we're excited that in pretty short term, that device will be available to women as they're giving birth. So, don't think, my point being, it's great that there are people like Jessica, solving literal huge pain points, but it can also be just a, superficial or, problem or something inconvenient that you observe. Yeah. Like, it doesn't have to be this, whole world changing thing necessarily. But if you're experiencing a pain point, probably other people are too. And so if you're developing a solution for yourself, there are going to be other people that need that as well.
Totally agree. I mean, there's so many amazing products that have come out invented by women to solve problems that we experience, because we experience the world slightly differently than men do. And so, I mean, everybody knows that from whether it's, sexual harassment or whatever that might be, just also to the size of us, and the skills and the abilities and the strength. And, so we experience the world differently. So why should we have the same products that everybody else does when it doesn't necessarily work for us? So I love that women are out there leading the charge on, hey, I'm making this world a better place for me and for other people. So that's just so amazing. Yeah. So talk to me a little bit.
There was an outdated phrase.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, there was an outdated phrase in the marketing world, back when, men ran all these consumer brands where they would just say, if they wanted to make a woman version, they would just shrink it and pink it, make a smaller size and make it pink. And that'll be fine for the women, right? And so I'm glad we've got some, appreciate that there's a bit more nuance that goes into making products for women now. We've got some women who are actually saying, well, no, there's these, different aspects and considerations to take into account.
Yes, 100% agree. So, when you're funding these women-owned businesses, tell me a little bit what your thoughts are on the systemic funding gap that's out there, because I mean, it's a major gap.
Oh, goodness. Yes, I could go on and on about this, but I think, it's great that there are more funds that exist and are trying to get funding to women, and we can sit here and bemoan it and say, oh, we got to move the needle. I think, you've got to go more to the source. And what I mean by source is breaking down barriers to women understanding investing, and getting more women check writers, right? Like, you can't just go out with some, talk about, oh, this is horrible, guys, you need to get more capital to women. Well, they're not always going to see the world the same way we do in terms of, what's a good idea for a product or a company. And so we need more women putting their money, behind the cause and becoming check writers, whether that's, as an angel investor yourself, investing into a venture capital fund, some crowdfunding campaign, whatever. I think, but what I found, is that we talk a lot about women being risk averse, and there's some truth to that. I know there have been studies, but I also think one of those things that makes women not leap into investing is just the barriers to understanding. So as I was raising my first fund, I just found, and this is just me, like, I was an outsider to venture capital who had to learn a lot about it as I started the fund. And so it became kind of a secondary mission of mine to just break down the barriers to understanding. Like, we don't have to talk about it in all these jargony lingo terms because, quite frankly, it's not that complicated. But, I'm a firm believer that knowledge is power, and a certain, demographic has kept that knowledge to themselves because then they have the power, right? But as we talked about Curate Capital, as we talked about venture capital, as we talked about investing in women, just in normal everyday terms, I had so many women approach me, whether in person, at conferences, or on social media, said, oh, well, I didn't know that's who can invest, or I didn't know that's how that worked, or, oh, I'm a customer of that brand. I didn't know that it was a possibility for me even to invest in these sorts of companies. So sign
Yeah.
me up. I mean, I had women who I had never met in person, but they knew me, for a decade or more on social media. And so I had that trust factor with them. But women I had never met who really just jumped in and maybe wrote a $500,000 check, or in one case, over $1 million, but they just didn't know before. And so,
Mm-hmm.
I think education is so important. And we're fortunate that we live in a day and age where we've got so much information at our fingertips, some good, some bad. So you have to sift through that. But, as much as we can, we want to explain and just break down those barriers to understanding, because then people can make their own decisions. And, venture capital investing, for instance, may not be for everyone, and that is totally fine. It comes with a certain risk threshold. It comes with a certain time frame, and that is not for everyone. I get it, but you must understand the game before you can decide if you want to play it.
Absolutely. Do you think any of that is societal? Because, like, for me, I can tell you that one of the frustrations I have, even as just a business owner, not even an investor, is it just feels like when I'm going out and about in my own social circles, there's so many taboo things that women just don't talk about. You are free
Oh,
to talk about your
100.
vacation, your
Yes.
kids, your husband, your house, your neighborhood, but don't dare talk about finances. Don't you dare talk about your job, because a lot of women are stay-at-home moms, which there's nothing wrong with that. But it just limits the conversation sometimes when I'm trying to, hey, I'm just trying to find a new workers' comp company, and I'm trying to deal with this issue right now. I'm dealing with that issue. And you
Yes.
realize, like, you need
Yes.
that, you need the people around you who can have those same conversations. And for women, sometimes that can be a little tricky. Like, I find myself gravitating, when you go to a party and all the men go to one side of the house and the other women go to the other side of the house. Like, I find I have more in common with the men because they're in businesses, and I might be able to talk to them about, like, hey, who are you
Yep.
using for your liability? And who are you, do you have a good attorney you can recommend? Like, because I need to know those questions. And when I go to the women, they're talking about, oh yeah, the bus driver's retiring. I'm like, I don't care. I don't care. Like,
Yeah,
I want to know other
exactly.
things.
Yeah.
So is it
No, it's so
societal, do you
important to
think
find your.
that? Yeah.
I think there's a big component of that, and your point made me think of a recent story, a little anecdote to share with you. We
Uh-huh.
in Houston have this local group of. It was an informal kind of socializing group of bloggers. Those probably
Mm.
started 10 years ago, and we get together once a quarter. About ish, maybe once a month, I don't know,
Uh-huh.
to just kind of socialize. I mean, kind of just talk about business, but it was more of a social thing, is what it turned into. And frankly, I don't always have time to go socialize. And just based on talking with other members, I should point out that most of them have changed from being bloggers to being entrepreneurs now. Everyone's kind of got their own business of some sort. Over the
Right.
10 years, it's all morphed. And so I kind of sense that there might be an appetite for, some actual like business content, rather than just sitting around chatting. And so
Mm-hmm.
last spring, I, for another reason, had brought into town one of the business coaches that I most trust and refer founders to often. She's wonderful. Her name is Sally Ogden. And so Sally had flown into Houston for something else, but I had her come to this little breakfast event with this, blogger / entrepreneur group. And they are not used to talking business. And Sally just walks up and she's like, 3 seconds into a conversation, like, well, what was your revenue last year? How much profit did you make on
Uh-huh.
that? And she's like
Uh-huh.
asking money questions, and you could
Yes.
just see the jaws drop and the eyes get big. And
Yeah.
she's like, oh, is that not, she's like,
Yeah.
yeah, I
I
forget. I mean,
love
she's
it.
Southern and kind of comes from that old school, genteel mindset as well. But like, she's no holds bar. She'll just go in and ask you about your numbers. And,
Good.
we've got to get out of this mode where any of that is taboo. I mean, obviously, like if there's something that's like confidential for, business reasons, that's one thing. But we are better together, and we've got to be willing to open up within a trusted community, because we don't need to kind of build the wheel from scratch, or whatever the idiom is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, there are trusted resources that we can share, and we can get from, A to Z faster and more successfully and without so many headaches, if we are willing to lean on, the experiences of others.
100%, 100%. Yes, I agree with you, because one of the things that I have found, that when I'm trying to get those conversations started, is that they'll give me a little information, but they kind of feel like, well, I don't know how much I can share. And I'm like, listen, just be transparent. The only way I can help you when somebody comes to me for advice, the only way I can help you is if you tell me what exactly is going on. Like, don't make it so that you're only giving me this big picture, like, oh, but marketing is this, and sales are this. Like, give me the real nitty gritty of what's going on. Don't nice it down, And so
That's
that's what
right.
I feel like
Yeah,
women
yeah.
do, is they nice it down. They figure out a way to tell you the version of it that's very people pleasing and very nice and watered down. And I'm like, just if somebody is a jerk, tell me they're a jerk. It's okay.
Yeah. Well, sometimes with the money talk, I mean, I think sometimes there's shame if things
Yeah.
aren't going well in the business, or they almost feel like they're bragging too much if things are going well. It's like, no, like numbers are just numbers, data is just data. And if we're trying to help one another, like you gotta be open about it.
Yeah.
So
Well,
anyway, yeah, so we certainly have a ways to go on that front.
for sure. Well, and even with this podcast, because one of my concerns was, am I going to find guests who are truly willing to talk about their experiences and their journey and then promote themselves? Because women generally don't like to do that. Generally, they will defer the accolades to somebody else. Oh, it was the team. It was this person who really stepped up and helped me, and it was, I wouldn't have done it without him, and and I've done the exact same thing. So I can't say that this is other women and not me. I mean, I've done this exact thing.
Yeah.
And so, but I'm like, I want you to own your power, own what you've done, own your status, own the hard work you put into this and the things that you've earned. So that was one of my concerns starting the podcast. But thankfully, I think women are starting to be comfortable in that space now.
Yes, that's great to hear and great to see. I see it slowly shifting as well. So
Yeah.
fingers crossed.
So in the venture capital space, do you feel like women ask for less? Because I've heard that women generally will ask for less than what they need. Do you feel that there's any truth behind that?
Yeah. Now I'll say come at this from a couple of perspectives. So being an outsider to venture capitalists, I don't always espouse all the traditional wisdom or conventional wisdom as it were.